My name is Ted Seckham. I'm a professional potter. I've been working with clay for in excess of 41 years now, full time. My journey in clay was inspired in a twofold way. I initially trained in biochemistry, working in pathology, and I worked in that career for a very short period of time after finishing university, only a couple of years, and I went to Europe and I never went back to work. So I was inspired in a twofold way. One was to find a path that I could walk on my own without being involved in working with other people in a structured format. So I didn't really like the idea of going to work, clocking on and clocking off at the end of the day, or being beholding to a hierarchy in a hierarchical sense. So I thought maybe I would try and become an artist. So I chose ceramics for a couple of reasons. One, my mum was a part-time potter, a very good one, but was involved with working on the farm a lot, so worked at it part-time. And I was also on return from Europe sharing a house with a potter who was apprenticed to a guy called Philip McConnell, who was a very well-known Australian potter at that time, and then got seduced into living in a cult and becoming a god-botherer. So I chose to make pots. I am totally self-taught, so I just jumped in the deep end and attempted to make pots for a living. So you can imagine that my initial efforts were fairly rudimentary, to say the least. Crude is more close to the truth. So I started making pots, and as I said, it was a full immersion therapy. So I made pots and worked at sold pots at little markets, built my own kilns, which were also a bit rough. I remember the first big kiln I built was made in a very dense fabric, and we could freeze a tank, a 1 ton gas tank, trying to get this damn thing up to temperature. And we learned it was very bad design when it imploded halfway through a firing one afternoon. So then it was rebuilt in a different way, and then worked as a tool for our service. I create pots on a potter's wheel, so I'm a traditional potter. I love traditional form. I'm very focused on highly elevated skill sets, things that resonate broadly in the community. I'm not very elitist in my thinking that I should make pots just for myself. I think that because I threw myself into potting, I then had to make a living from pots. So I make pots my own way, but I also make pots that I hope will resonate with the greater community, and I've been successful at doing that because I've worked full time as a potter for 41 years. Why do I create? I create because I have to. I have, like many an artist, I have a calling to do it. I'm also feeling like I'm walking a road that is an unending road, and that it changes direction. I'm always looking and seeking for that holy grail of pots. And people sometimes, when you get asked to do exhibitions or enter exhibitions and so forth, they said, we want your best work. Well, best work doesn't come from making what you think is a great work. Great work happens as an accumulation of efforts, and quite often you'll make a pot to the best of your ability, whether it be throwing, trimming, glazing and firing, but ultimately when it comes from the kiln it may be a very ordinary object to look at. So great work comes from process, being involved in process, and it just happens. Sometimes then all the variables become right and manifest in a beautiful piece of work. What motivates me is a quest for beauty. I mean, I use that term a lot, but I'm constantly searching and seeking and testing and trying to develop new surfaces on my pots that have never been seen before, and I'm reasonably successful at that. And I continue a slow evolution of glaze tests to try and find that holy grail of glaze and of pots. And this year I've got some new work and new tests coming out. I run tests in every single firing I do, and sometimes they end up in dead ends, and sometimes something new in the world opens up for me. So that's just a general sort of idea of how I go about my work process. Thanks for listening.